I'm Ani Filipova, the creator and host of the Twenties Possible podcast. With the help of our guests, we will uncover practical advice, actionable tips, and inspirational stories that can help you make your career change possible. Let's tune in. Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the Twenties Possible podcast. I can't wait to introduce you to my guest today, Augusto Rozo. He is one of these people for whom change is a way of life. Augusto was 19 when he first moved to New York City. At 22, he was in Barcelona and started his first company with only $80. Eventually, the business took him around the world, selling his products, building fascinating connections, and discovering new opportunities. While in his 20s, he also learned 3 new languages and took 2 masters and 1 MBA. Later, he moved to the Middle East, where he tried the other side of the coin, being employed by others. At 39, he quit his job to pursue a new dream. Throughout his eclectic journey, Augusto learned innumerable lessons about people, business, organizations, and change. And now, he will share some of these with us. Hi, Augusto. Good morning and welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Good morning, Annie. This is great. Very excited to talk to you this morning and thankful for your invitation.
Well, it will be a very interesting discussion. I'm really looking forward to it because, when we had our preliminary chat, after that, I was thinking that you're probably the first guest who seems to have unusual and exciting career changes as a way of life, rather than, 1 or 2 pivots during your career journey, right? So can you tell us something about your upbringing and this early life that shaped you into the person who is open and looking to try new things all the time?
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. My parents were entrepreneurs, so they had a very driven spirit, and I am sure that this helped shaping my character. I always saw the example of people who were eager to make things happen, right? Like they were never necessarily comfortable with what they were or with what they were doing, and they would change things easily. I remember, for example, very clearly that we moved houses many times. And there was never an issue about it. Like, that sometimes when you have when you move house and you think, it's something that you dread or that you feel it's overwhelming. And I never heard that at home. It was the opposite. It's exciting. So I was thinking actually a couple of days ago that I want to list, and I'm going to ask my mom, she's 83 right now, to do a little exercise to think of all the moves we did, because I really want to have that list. And I think, going to your question, that was a crucial part, because then I never saw change as threatening. I always saw change as something to embrace. And another, I think, important part of the story is that they were avid travelers. And I grew up also with a curiosity to see other places. And I knew since I was very little that I was going to move away just to see the world. And so I think that those 2 elements really shaped a bit my character, I think.
Right. So let's go to your first non-traditional pivot. And again, you said that when we spoke earlier, you said that you were brilliant at science and math, but you chose to study filmmaking. And you went to New York to do that. Why did you do that?
See, with time, I've understood that I've been a polymath, and that is something that I didn't really know when I was young. And that means that now I have understood that I have multiple interests, that I can work in different remits, and that I can perform relatively well. And that is, it's both a blessing and a curse, if you will, because it means that you have multiple interests. That also means that, change is something that you embrace. And back then, at that age, math came naturally to me, maybe because my dad was excellent at math. In fact, he was an accountant, and it was just something that it's something that you have, right? Like I excelled at it, and it was something that I loved. And then chemistry also became very interesting. And in the national exams that was high school in Colombia, out of 80, I got 80, like, because that is, I understood just the language of chemistry. And I think it was because I was really eager in understanding how, nature works and how things work. But then that didn't mean that was it for me. Like, it's not because you're good at something that you necessarily have to pursue that only thing. Right. And I had other, right.
That's a very contrarian opinion, because people would say, oh, you just have to concentrate on whatever you excel in. But go on, it's so fascinating.
Yes. Well, no, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I'm not saying that. What happens if you have 2 or 3 or 4 things that you are good at or that you like, even if you are not necessarily the best, but I was not particularly, driven by filmmaking, but I had since I was young an interest in the artistic expression and in communications. And it was tough to get into that school. So for me, it was a challenge because it was only one school in the whole country, and it was like 1,000 people wanted to get, and it was just 30 seats. So I was like, you know what? And I was offered, if I went through, the examinations and whatever, I would get a scholarship. And so that was interesting because I was like, okay, why not? Like, I would like to have a scholarship. I was also thinking of the finances of my project because my parents were getting older at that point. I was 18. My dad at that point was already 17. And he was, saying, well, you can go for the fancy private school. And I was thinking, my dad, like, the finances at home weren't great. And in this other school, that was tougher to get. If I got in, I would get a scholarship that would enable me to study without having any pressure of having my dad having to pay for that for the foreseeable 4 years. So I was 18, but I was already thinking about, I might as well secure something, that I like because I was interested in stories, but also that I can eventually afford on my own if my parents for some reason are missing. You know what I mean? And the good news is that I passed and I was accepted. So I was like, I didn't choose the career. The career chose me. But I think the point of your question is, you can be good at different things. You have different options. You don't necessarily have to go for the top one. Maybe top 2 or top 3 is good enough, because with time, then your top 3 might become your top 1. And it's okay. I was not the best filmmaker candidate, but eventually I got interested in that. I studied it and it was okay at the end.
Okay. So, did you work on this subject, on the filmmaking?
And very little. My first job only after I graduated, I went to New York and I worked as a video editor, making weddings and this type of social gatherings for an Italian American company in New York. And it's also probably another interesting thing because I had studied Italian just because I love languages. And I remember my parents saying, well, why Italian? Like, right. Like my friends were like saying, well, I was like, I really like the sound of this language. And I studied it for 2 years. And I did that after school, after university. I went to study like from 7 to 8 p.m. every day to the Italian Institute. And I became fluent in Italian. So
Wow.
Who would have said that then when I applied for that job, they wanted someone. It was in New York, but because in some of these Italian families who live in New York, some of the nonna, they don't really speak English. And so part of the ceremony were included, like the moment where the groom was going to the nonna to talk to them. And the editor had to understand what was going on. So they were looking for an Italian speaker. And I was like, no, but I mean, or an Italian, not an Italian speaker. And I was like, no, I'm not Italian, but I speak Italian and I'm an editor. So you see, at the end, again, is everything you learn, you will eventually put it into practice and you will use it. It's fascinating.
Fascinating. All right. So then you went to Barcelona. And then you had the jewelry business with your wife, right? And then you
Yes,
went
yeah.
back to Colombia. So tell us a little bit about these changes, what powered them, and what drove you through them from one to another.
I think back to the point at the beginning is if you feel that for some reason you're not in the place where you want to be, figure out the formulas and the steps to change, right? And New York was a place that I wanted to go when I was younger, and I wanted to be there, and I went. I had no job, and it was, like very tough city, very tough days. But eventually got a job, and I could work, and Then my then girlfriend joined me there, and we said, let's build something together, but in Barcelona. We had fallen in love with that city when we were very young. We had gone when we were like 17, and we had said that day. It was when we ended our high school. I studied in a Spanish school and in Colombia. And so we had fallen in love with Barcelona. And so we said, one day we'll come here. We'll come back to live. So 5 years later, we did it. So, and that's the thing, like you have to visualize something, and you will work on it little by little. And it might take 1 month or 1 year or 10 years, but stick to it and work for it little by little, right? Like learning a language, 2 years or whatever, going to the gym, everything. And so we said, okay, so now's the time to go to Barcelona. And we went again, no job, no nothing. And then we just say, hi, Barcelona. And we loved it. And Daniela, she was starting to design jewelry, and I've been a bit of a salesman throughout my life. I've sold all sorts of things. And I thought, well, this is beautiful. Let's try and sell it. So we did. So I started selling. I was teaching English for Spanish speakers, as a side job, because I then started a master's. But then I saw her jewels were pretty. So I started to bring them to the English school, to the teachers, some students, and I saw there was demand. So like, I started to also make with her, like in the evening, right? After our masters, and then after our class, the teaching, and then from 10 to midnight or whatever, we were like fixing stuff, and then the next day selling. And at some point it became so big that I had to quit my job, and I had to start selling throughout different shops. First in the town where we lived, then in the region where we lived, then in Spain. Then I bought a car, then I went to France, to Italy, and we eventually ended up selling in 25 different countries. Employed 15 people. It was, it was really incredible.
And then what happened? You went back to Colombia?
Well, I continued to work. So I set up a second business related to this business, distributing raw materials for jewelry making in Colombia, but without moving all the time. I was traveling because as I owned the company we owned it with Daniela in Barcelona. I had flexibility to go for 2 months or 3 months, whatever was needed to be in Colombia. So it was a new business, and it was in parallel to the other one. Again, a way of identifying opportunities. I think one of the key messages that I'd love to convey today is for you for you to move or to change. What you also need to be always doing is to be open to opportunities, and to be really observing. I was not necessarily thinking of setting up a business in Colombia, but when I went to discover a new supplier in the Czech Republic for our business in Barcelona, and I asked that they didn't have representation in Colombia, I thought, this could be interesting. So I found a partner, a friend, in fact, and then, I explained the opportunity, why not? And so we set up a business. So it's almost you stumble upon the opportunity and you act upon it. But for you to do that, you first need to identify it and to be open to see it, even if it's not something that you are necessarily looking for. Yes, exactly. And so to your question, some of these pivots are related to identifying things that you just need to observe. And of course, acting upon it in many cases, and I would say in my case, always, with the help of others. So that's a very important message too, which is your network is not this saying cliche, network is your net worth. It's true. It is, right? And so And in my case, I wouldn't have been able to set up that business in Barcelona, for example, if I hadn't had my partner. In my case, we could work together. My wife. Not everybody is supposed to work with their partner, but what I'm saying is, it can be your friend. Sometimes it can be your brother or your sister. Sometimes it can't, but sometimes it can. And I've seen successful businesses of two siblings and of two, of husband and wife, or even father and daughter, like, exactly. So my point is, at the end, also to make those changes happen, be observant, not just in terms of the opportunity, but also in terms of the people who can work with you to make it happen.
Yeah. So to sum it up, be open, observe and look and find the opportunity, act on it, get the right people to support you. So these are the 4 steps. Amazing.
Correct.
And then, for a change, you went all the way to UAE.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What was the coincidence there? What was the observation?
Yes, it's an observation.
Exactly.
Because I was going to say, no, Chris, it's an observation. So, look, when we were in Barcelona growing the business, it was an expansive economy back then. It was between 2003, 2008, when the crash happened. The big economic crash happened in 2008. And then 2009, 10, 11, they were very, gray years. And the economy was really, really stagnant in Spain and in Europe, which were our main markets. But we saw that some of the markets that still worked well were the Emirates and Qatar. We had a couple of clients there, and we saw that their level was still working. We were selling, and not in small quantities. So this triggered our curiosity. Because, again, to your point, observation, right? So what markets are moving? And so I had gone through an MBA between 2010 and 12, so I needed to finish it. quite an expensive investment, or a high investment. And so I said, well, let me finish it. And then we agreed that it was the time to move on. Like, the venture that we had given what it was. We sold it. We had gone into some debt to grow it, and also to pay for my MBA. So we wanted to take care of our finances, pay back debt, because you don't want to stay with debt too unnecessarily, and sort out everything so that we could move on to something new. And we were just shy of 30, like we were on our early 30s, and we thought, why not go to a market that is happening? And so again, we went knowing almost no one, and just hi UAE, and then here we come. The idea was to set up our business there, but that happened for visa purposes and stuff. My wife, she looked for a job. She found a job quickly, and I also found a job. And when I found mine, then she left hers so that we could start the venture. But then she got pregnant, and it was twins. So we were like, wow, we're new in this country. So what do we do now?
Instant family.
Yes. So look, at the end, because of the twins in part, we decided not to set up the business. I got employment, like a senior role, in fact. And I stuck to that. And then Daniela took some time to be with the kids, and from there it's been a venture in the UAE in different roles and in different capacities, working amazing companies, and really building also a corporate career, which I didn't have in my 20s.
Great. While you're talking, it seems to me that having different side hustles consistently is what drives these pivots from one to another. Is that correct? Is it correct observation?
Yeah, to a certain extent it is. Look, again, not every formula works for everyone, right? Like some people, I'm not someone who says every person needs to have a side hustle, and not every person needs to leave their country to make a living, and not every person needs to have 3 MBAs or 3 masters. Like, by no means, right? Like, I have my nature is curious, and I think I have even accelerated that nature with like the more I learn. Like I studied 5 languages just because I love languages. So for me, but I am really bad at playing football or at playing, you know, you have different talents and you have different interests. So just whatever your interest is, just go for it and make use of it. For me, to have languages has allowed me, for example, to sell in different countries. So when I was selling jewelry in France, I was speaking in French. When I was in Italy, I was speaking in Italian, right? And we were living in Catalonia, so I was speaking Catalan, and I needed that, and it was a way to combine my interests and my passions with and making use of them. And that is the whole point. Whatever you're good at, again, not necessarily top one, but you have different things, whether it's writing, or speaking, or selling, connecting with people. They're different skills, right? And if you use them, and you use them in different ways, you can explore different things. And in that sense, I have had the opportunity, or maybe I also created opportunities to use and create side hustles, as you call them, in different moments. And so, for example, I helped during a number of years, especially in my early 30s, different businesses that were small that had gone through challenges that I had gone myself, giving them advice on an hourly basis, sometimes during the weekends, and that helped me during the time that after I left my job when the girls were born, to be a consultant, like on a full-time basis for different, clients. And it was because I had those connections from before. So to your point, if you have something that is living, then, and it happened to me when I left my corporate job in 2021, and I came to Sweden, which is another chapter. Yeah. I immediately had someone to work with from all those clients who onboarded me as an advisor, and in fact made me a partner in their business.
I see. You were talking about MBAs. You had 3 MBAs, and I absolutely admire that. But these days people think MBA and studying is overrated. You obviously don't share this opinion. Can you tell us what were these MBAs and how did they help you in your career journey?
Yeah. Well, let's say the formal MBA was one that was a 2-year program, and the other were just masters related in administration, one in retail and distribution, and the other one more in international business. Yeah, I mean, again, if you ask the question to people whether marriage works, you will get all sorts of answers, right? And I am an advocate because I found my partner very early on, and I think that life, being accompanied by or accompanying someone that you love and that they love, like it's amazing. It works for me. But I know perfectly happy people who live on their own. Does it mean that marriage is good or bad? No, it isn't. And I think it's what you make out of every situation. From my MBA, other than the ton of knowledge that I got, challenged myself, having been a filmmaker and then doing corporate finance. Trust me, it was challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like it was one of the toughest experiences, and I was so far from my comfort zone, but it was, I powered through, and it was actually quite okay. Right. And eventually I ended up with an A in financial accounting and some stuff that was so crazy, but you see, you don't know about it until you try it. Like, that is what's fascinating. Maybe that's when my maths came back. Right. So anyway, but the point is, to your question, it works if you want to make it work. And for me, in addition to this knowledge, it was about the network and the friends. I've made friends there that for life. One of them introduced me to the only contact I had in the UAE when I decided to move. Right. So one of my closest friends in the MBA said, I have a friend who is in the UAE. Talk to him. Well, that guy, the friend of my MBA friend, was the one who hosted us at his home when we went to the UAE with nothing. And he said, I have a spare room here. You guys can stay. And we lived with him for 3 months until we sorted out our things. And this is the type of things that you can get, like, yes, corporate finance, fantastic, but the people, right? The people. And that's why I will always be grateful, because then this friend, he's now the godfather of he became one of my closest friends now, right? After 10 years now. And it was all thanks to this network and these relations that you build in a program where you're really like going deep with people that are going through the same thing. And that's why I think those experiences help. And, not every program is going to be like that, but you can only get these type of things if you try them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're so right saying that everything is driven by people. Even the largest technology companies, even AI is all driven by people, taught by people. So people are in the base of everything. Sometimes we forget about that, but it's good to be reminded every so often. So you had so many transitions from one country to another, setting up businesses, starting from zero. So what advice would you give to people who are planning to do something like this? What, from all your moves, what were the key takeaways that people should learn, know, and plan about?
Look, I think the first thing is, when you think about everything that comes with each decision, you feel overwhelmed and you feel it's too much, and you almost decide not to move just when you realize it. Again, these are things that are cliche, but the truth is that they have worked for me. I don't necessarily look at the end of the road. I need to understand what is the goal, yes, and think, okay, I want to move here, I want to do this job, but I start with one thing. What is the first thing I can do, right? Like one, because then that triggers a succession of events. Then the next one, and the next one. Recently, I have helped a client set up their business. She was completely overwhelmed. She knew what she wanted to do, but overwhelmed. Where do I start? And it was like, at some point she was even considering to get a job, because she said, although she wanted to be an entrepreneur. So it was my role to help her realize that what she wanted was doable. And we did it, right? And so we started with one specific thing. Yeah, it was in the digital space, and it was about creating content, and it was related to LinkedIn. And we started with simple things. So what is the first message that you would write to relate? What is your story? Let's think about your story, right? Because I'm also very interested in storytelling and content strategy and whatnot. Let's say, well, do you feel comfortable starting there? And she said, yes. So we started to build that story. And when she started to work on that, she realized that the story was very compelling. And so why don't we start then thinking of posting? And when she started posting, it went nuts. It was incredible. So that triggered an immediate source of dozens of leads interested in working with her. She didn't even have a website or a catalog or anything. I mean, of course, she had the methodology that she was going to use with her clients. But so then at that point, we said, okay, so I guess we need a catalog, right? And so, moment for developing a catalog. And then I need a website. So a website. And then she said, well, now I can have a digital product. So 1 week of developing an ebook and putting it on Gumroad. And step after step, in space of 3 months, she has a full running business with daily content, with digital products, with coaching that she's delivering on a individual and group basis. But it all started by saying, can I think of my story? And can I think of the pieces? And can I think of start sharing it and generating the traction that she needed to see to verify that what she wanted to offer was valuable and that there was a demand for it. You see, if she had wanted to just she had no logo there, she had no name, she had nothing. And so if she had thought of just trying to set up everything and first the website and the logo and the portfolio and the catalog, and then also try to bring the business and then it becomes impossible. But sometimes, again, the other lesson is it doesn't have to be perfect, Like we came to Sweden without knowing the language, without many things. And it's like, okay, I'll show up, I'll sign up for lessons, I'll start going. And after 1 year, maybe I can go to buy my groceries in the supermarket. And maybe after 3 years, I will be able to have a conversation. But just take that step. Sometimes the first one is the scariest one, but once you take it, the rest comes easy.
Amazing. That's a story I hear so much, and in other creators who actually started, their businesses exactly the same way. And people often underestimate the knowledge they have, and they underestimate the interest other people have in their knowledge, because we think that, I don't know anything, and why would anybody want to listen to me? But there's so many people out there who they don't have the knowledge you have, and they're really keen to listen to you. But you have to start and find out.
That's exactly what happened to her. I think that she realized it as she saw the demand. So, and it's a great lesson that you're summarizing there, because I feel that this is very important for all of us. Even it still surprises me that people want to hear my advice, but for some reason, yes, you don't realize that after 20 years working in all sorts of organizations, small and big, in different countries, well, you do have something to say,
But, you have a lot to say.
Well, maybe, but you see, some people are interested and they say yes, but you don't wake up thinking that. Right? So I think that is a key message there for everybody, me included.
So many great things you said. I'll have a lot of problems editing this podcast because there is, everything is gold. And unfortunately, we're towards the end. So to end the podcast, can you just think of the 3 key advice, key takeaways you give to the listeners who want to have a pivot in their career, that are stuck and want to do something different, that they want to find the job they love? What should they do?
Look, number one, I would say maybe be smart with your finances. Because when you have a certain financial freedom, you can give yourself time to change. Because sometimes change requires a downtime. Sometimes looking for a job or creating something new is a job on its own. In fact, most times. And so at some point when I was working in the agency and I decided to leave that job because I wanted to spend more time with my kids because they were too little and I was just working 16 hours. If I hadn't saved for me to make that decision without having a job, it would have been tough. It would have been probably impossible because I still had to provide at home. So I have always vouched for a living standard within your possibilities and not necessarily overspending. I have never overspent, and that has facilitated many other things, such as those changes. And in that moment, I said, I quit by, I was not worried for money. And by the way, it doesn't mean that you have to have €1 million or have €1 million. No, not at all. Right? Not at all. But you say, can I leave for 6, 8, 10 months? And then in that period, you work on it. And as I said, I started working actually 1 month later with a side hustle that then after 2 months became double the amount of what I was earning. So, but for you to get there, you need to give yourself permission, and a good part of it, especially if you have a family, is to have some basic savings and finances that can help you make those decisions. Number 2 would be to start small. People say, how can I think of a pipeline of clients? And I would say, you don't need a pipeline of clients. You need one client, right? So if you have one client, you start, you deliver, you make them happy, you learn, then you'll find the second one. But start with one. I remember the first shop who bought art jewelry. That's what I needed as validation to say, if one bought, there might be a second one. And we ended up selling to 400 different retailers. But it started with one shop that was 7 minutes away from home. I just went out with the products, put them in a backpack, and just say hi. Spoke in their language though, and say, I have something to show you. And they bought, right? So it's that one step, one client, right? And then number 3, speak openly about your deep interests and values and your mission and your things with your loved ones, with your partner, with your parents, open up and brainstorm. Sometimes we just take them for granted. We think they're there to just hug you, take you to school or prepare dinner. No, this is your stakeholder group. And when you transmit that and you bring it, you will get good feedback, you will build together. For me, it has been key, the conversation and the brainstorming with my wife. And we have helped each other. We have boosted each other. We have really, helped each other lift, in a way or another. Each of us have lifted the other up, you see. So that only happens if you're open about what you like, what you don't like, and your dreams. It's not easy. It's not romantic. I'm saying that will generate some type of tough conversation, challenging stuff. But if you don't open it, it will never happen. So speak up.
Yeah, speak up, because otherwise people start guessing and they will guess the wrong thing. Yeah, assuming and guessing. And I don't think that helps anyone. No, that's, thank you so much. It was such an interesting chat. I wish you all the best with whatever endeavor you're starting. And hope something new. I'm sure. Thank you, Augusto. All the best.
Yes, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And if this in any way can inspire others, again, I'm not an example by any means. All the mistakes in the world, but I am happy to talk to people like you who want to enable others, so that they know that it's possible. And it sometimes just take to talk to the right person or to find the right one client, right? Like to take these little steps that trigger a transformation, right? Like the example I mentioned about going to Dubai through a friend of a friend or stuff like that. So it is true. It can happen. And that's the only reason I think sharing these stories matter, so that others trigger their own things in their lives.
So one observation, one idea, act, one client. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, right?
Nothing less. Exactly. Not necessarily easy, but not impossible.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Please remember to review, rate and subscribe when you have a chance. You can do that on your favorite podcast platform or go to our site, changeispossible.site. Thank you once again and have a great day.